Alright, so new video. I've had a few questions about how I do the resin, and in the last videos you saw me do the rub method, which is sitting there wiping it on, making sure you wipe it all off with the grain, as I've learnt now, to make sure that minimise the bubbles and all that. Oh, this one here is a wine goblet that I've just knocked up with a captured ring, which makes resining a little bit more interesting because you don't want this thing resting on here. You can probably see these little wires sticking out. These will come into play a bit later on, and we actually tie the ring so it hovers just away from the shaft so that it can have resin on it, and the goblet can have all the resin on there, and you're not going to get this mark where the actual ring's been sitting. So what I do is I'll do the resin, as you'll see in a second, and then I'll actually bend these up, and I've got little bits of wire, copper wire sitting over here, just little strands, very thin so they don't make too much of a mark, and I tie them onto the actual wire and onto the actual captured ring to keep them apart. Now what I've done is I've just laid down, you can't see it, but this is a little plastic cover over the top of the bed of the lathe just to keep all the resin off it when doing this, because it sticks to there and it makes a big mess. So I've managed to mix up a little bit of resin there, just a little 8mm mix. So what I tend to do is to get it onto the actual piece, I just pour it inside there, pour it down and start turning. It'll find its way all the way through there. Bring a little bit out. Let's try and keep some left in the cup there for a bit later on, in case we need to get some out. So then all it's a matter of, same thing as the other way, but you're on the lathe, you don't have to hang on to it and rub it. I tend to rub it like this, just to get it right down into the bottom of the actual goblet. I know you can't see down in there, I can't even see what I'm doing. I just do it all by feel. I can feel there's lots of resin inside there at the moment, so it's getting a nice good coating. Make sure it's getting into all the grain and everything like that. And then a nice rub on the outside. Changes it straight away. You can see the colour difference already. Make sure you get it all nice wiped around, all over everything. And these wires, you've got to keep your eye on them all the time. You don't want to get hit by them, that's for sure. They can do a bit of damage to you. I just need a bit more down in here. Make sure you actually do this. I tend to do this before with the lathe spinning, and you miss a few spots, so you've really got to make sure you rub it into the grain, especially when you're working like this with an end grain. Get it down. I've got a few grooves here that I want to make sure that they get down inside, get a good coating over the whole thing, and then I'll just grab onto that captured ring. One thing to remember now, I've got resin on this hand as well now, so I don't really want to start chucking my hand on the chuck and all that sort of stuff. A couple of grooves you can't see at the back here, make sure they're in there. Now with the rub method, that would probably about it. But what happens there is you tend to get a bit of a pool of resin sitting in here on the base there, which is okay, but I want to show you this method that I do here. Now what I've done is I've set the lathe to the slowest speed I can go. Now to a lot of people it's still quite fast. We're going to be running at 250 RPM, which is still quite quick. But what it does is it tends to centrifugally force all the resin out onto the outer part here and all that sort of stuff, which you'll see in a second. So that's the lathe, 250 RPM. It probably looks really fast on there, on the actual video, but it's not that fast. I can sit here quite happily in there and it's not spinning fast at all. These look like they're spinning very fast, and that's what you've got to watch. You've got to make sure you stay well away from those things. You hit them and you're going to end up with a bit of a nasty cut. So keep them out of the way. Now this is the method that I did on my very first cups, and they seem to be still one of the best finishes that we've come up with. So I thought I'd give it another go with this one. You can probably see a little bit of the resin dripping off every now and then. Try to avoid that. Try and keep as much on the cup as we can. sort of runs a bit like pottery, I guess. You can see the rings still rolling around in there. That's okay. You can just sit there and pop a bit of resin on there as well, which keeps it nice and coated. Try and push it all the way down here. I'm not getting flicked by any resin. It's quite thick stuff to hang on to the wood. But while this is all happening on the outside that you can see, what's happening on the inside is it's all getting forced out into the wood. And like it's got a hollow inside here, so it'll all be sitting down inside there. And what it will do, instead of just sitting in the hollow, it'll force itself up towards the fastest part spinning. So I can bring it all the way up onto the outside edge and just roll my thumb back the other way and get it to go down. And you saw when it first started up, this bit of aeration happens. You can see this on the actual finger there, I hope. And after a few runs over like this, you can see the bead happening there. They all disappear just by getting squashed out by my fingers, sort of thing. If they do tend to hang around, just hit them with a blowtorch and they'll soon disappear. I'll just sit there and work it, make sure it's all the way to the bottom. Put my finger right, press hard against the bottom there, and I can bring it all the way back out again. Bring any excess up, hold my hand there so I can catch any if it comes through. You can see it all coming out there, all aerated. And I'll just run that down. You see all the air disappearing as I squish it. Squish. And run it down the goblet, all the way down. Make a nice coat. All the way down. And yet again, all over the captured ring. You can't come off, so there's not much you can do about it. It's got to stay on there. It rolls along with the rest of it, all the way down on the base. Of course, we can't do the very underneath of the base at the moment because it's still joined to the bit of wood, so we'll wait for this to all set before we can do that. Play with it too much. Once you get a nice coat, you can see the, I don't know if you can see that or not, but the aerations all come back on again. I'll just squash my finger on there, run it down, get the bead of air. There it goes, all the way down the bottom into the grooves. Run it up there. You know that you've got a good coating over the whole goblet. So what we want to do now is we want to set that ring out like that so it's not going to be rubbing on anything. So I'm going to stop the lathe, get these gloves off for a second, and show you how I set that up. Just make sure it's sitting there all the way through. I can't really see down here because my light's right up the top there out the way at the moment. I try not to move anything once I've got the resin going. Any bit of dust gets moved around, it always ends up on the work that you're trying to do, no matter how much you try. So try not to move anything around. If I'm going to have a look inside here, I'll go and get a little torch just to have a look down in there. Right. I'll just take that glove there off. And switch the lathe off. Right, now what I tend to do is give that a bend up like that. You can see the nice coating on there, there's no air in it whatsoever. There's a few bubbles on the surface, we'll just run the blowtorch over that in a second. Bend that one up. So they're not touching the work or anything like that, they're out the way. I'm going to have to take the other glove off, unfortunately. Alright. And all I tend to do is just get this few winds around like that. That's got that there. And you can slide it up and down to wherever you like. And all I do, that's where the gloves come in handy, because you can actually get out of there without getting resin all over you. Just set that like that and loop around again. And then come to the other side. You can see it's already starting to grab there, so it's quite a good little plan. I've only done this once before, because this is the second time I've done resining with a captured ring. I'll lose a bit of the wire on there to make sure it's all nice. Oop, I just touched the goblet. These things happen. That's the joys about resin, and it's going to be quite happy to form itself back there again in a second. Alright, so I've set these completely opposite, and then you just get it nice and tight like that, and then I just wind that back on there again. It's not an exact science, of course. Another thing I do here is, and as you can see, the ring is now hovering in mid-air. And the joy of this little setup, as long as you're careful, keep your hands out the bloody way. And we can set that off again. Now all that centrifugal force is forcing all the resin back out again, keeping it quite happy in there. And that stem now won't actually get captured by that captured ring there and have all the resin stuck on there. The only thing you do end up with is two little lines where the wire is, but you can sort that out later on. Now I want to try and get the glove back on that's got all the resin on it. As I said before, you've got to be mindful that those wires are now sticking all the way through there, but the reason I set them out a little bit like that is I can actually get my hand down inside here. Oop, that resin's getting sticky. Just where I touched it before. Just dunk my finger into the pot of resin up there. I've got a tiny little bit left in there just for this reason. You don't want your fingers to get too sticky and dry. You actually want them a little bit wet with the resin still, and we'll get it down inside there. Make sure that's all nice and coated where I touched it with my finger. And down inside again. The ring looks like it's getting a bit of a wobble happening there to it. As long as it doesn't touch, we should be right. The one thing that can happen is those spikes can turn in there, which may have happened. Yes, it has. That one's turned, and that's what's causing that little shake in there. So we just turn it back straight, like that, like that. All right. Set that back in. Nope, didn't like that one. Didn't like that one. Move it up that way a little bit. Alright. That one's come loose. That's what it is. I might have to get a bit of a wind up on one of these. You just twist the wires like that. Give them a bit more tension. Or you can pull these out a bit further, entirely up to you. Move it up that way, puts more tension on, keeps it in the centre. There's probably other ways of doing it, but this is the way I do it. As you can see, it's going to stay there now. You can see a few little bubble lines on the very outer circumference here. So I'll just get the blowtorch. All we do with the blowtorch, just waft it over where you see the bubbles. I don't know if you can see that or not, but the bubbles will just all disappear. Pop, 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 pop. And it's not actually the heat that's doing it, it's actually the lack of oxygen, apparently. But I tend to find that if you don't get the heat to it, or the flame to it, the bubbles don't come to the surface and pop. So there goes those couple there. Of course, down in the guts here, you can't really see. Let me get that glove off. I've got myself a little magic torch down there. Have a look down in there. Now we're not looking for a perfect base at the bottom there at the moment. We just want to make sure that all the bubbles are gone from inside. It's a matter of just taking all the oxygen out of the system and get all the bubbles gone. I'm sure that's really exciting video for you at the moment. I'll just waft it around in there, make sure all the bubbles are gone. This is only a first coat, but you still want as much of the bubbles gone as you can without overheating the resin and causing bubbles in it from the heat. I think my blowtorch needs a little bit more gas. For now it's fine, as long as it's still blowing flame out. And that there is basically how I do the spin style method, because what I'll do now is once all the bubbles are gone, I'll actually start this lathe back up again. Hopefully that ring's going to stay where I want it to, and I'll just sit it on here running for 10 minutes or so until the resin actually sets, and then you don't get any of the runs or anything like that. It tends to centrifugally force it out and keep it all in a perfect little spot. So let's see how we go. If that one's going to stay there. Blow the torch out. So now that's just going to sit there spinning like that for 10 minutes or so, which is not really exciting video, so I'll end this video here, and that's basically how I do the centrifugal resining.